Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Gulsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science.
All right. Well, we are through the season in the far south, beginning the season in the far north, and kind of in the middle of it in some places.
Well, don't count me out yet, Marcus. We've got a few more days.
Yeah. Well, we've got a story for you that we'll tell here pretty soon. But today we have the Turkey Management Program Coordinator from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission with us, Buddy Welch. So, Buddy, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Sure, I'm glad to be here, and certainly appreciate the invite.
Yeah, well, we wanted to have you for a few reasons. We've been getting, well, at least I do. I get quite a few emails from folks in Florida or that hunt in Florida that are really interested in the status of turkeys in Florida, and also really interested in some of the ongoing work that we're collaborating on. So we wanted to talk to you about several of those things, but I also know that you really like turkey hunting, and you recently were out with your sons and had a really fun story to tell to us. So I was wondering if we could kind of start there, and you could tell us about that, and then we can get going.
Sure, be happy to. Me and my youngest son both had the good fortune to draw a quota permit on one of our WMAs this year, and that particular hunt lasts for it's either 6 or 7 days. I can't remember, but I knew that I was going to hunt 4. So got to hunt with both boys. The first day, no luck, although we did see some birds, but didn't hear any. But because of where we saw them and the time that we saw them, had a good idea of where to get on them the next day. So we set up pretty early. Before daylight, it's pretty open there, so there's not much moving. Once it gets pretty good and light, and so I was guessing where the birds were roosted, and lo and behold, they were pretty close to where I thought they would be, and we were able to call in a group of birds, and my oldest son got to shoot one of those birds, and so that was really neat. But the big bird of that group got away. There was a miscommunication between my two sons. I thought the oldest boy could only hunt 2 days, and this was the second day on Sunday, and so I thought we had decided he was going to shoot the bird, and turns out he was trying to get the young one to shoot the bird, and the turkey was right in our face, and they couldn't talk much, and they could see a little bit different views. There was some palmetto in the way for the young boy, and anyway, so the big bird got away.
So how were y'all set up? Were you kind of behind them, and they were both on the same tree? Or?
Yep, I was behind them about 10 yards or so, and they were in front of me, and they were spread out against the tree, each of them probably 7 or 8 yards apart. So they weren't next to each other, where they couldn't communicate very well either with a turkey.
So you were getting to watch it all.
I got to watch it all. Yeah. So, yeah. As a matter of fact, the turkey came actually from behind us and hit a road, and I actually could have shot the big bird before it ever came around and got in front of the boys. So, but of course I didn't want to do that. Anyway, but there was things happened, and we didn't get the big bird. So my oldest did get a bird, and he had to go back to work on Monday. So the little one and I say little, he's now 18. But we went back the next day to that spot to try to get on the big bird. And did not gobble, didn't hear anything. So we waited there till probably 8 o'clock or so. And it's like, well, shoot, let's go somewhere else. It's not going to work. Either he didn't roost here or he is clearly not interested. So we went to another place and still on the WMA, and got out and just started walking and looking, and in a place that I've never been before, but a place that I marked a couple of years ago as being, looked good. So got out, started walking, and there was sign everywhere. It was fantastic. I was like, man, I can't believe a turkey's not gobbling. It was a really nice morning. And so we eased along and on an old road and called a little bit, every now and then. And no luck, but we were liking what we were seeing. And I was thinking about maybe just setting up somewhere and just calling for a little while, because that does work. And lo and behold, we heard a turkey at 9:30. And he wasn't very far away when he gobbled, and we were close enough there that had that bird been gobbling before, we would have heard it. So I'm convinced that was his first gobble, at least since we had been there for probably 45 minutes or an hour. And it was fairly open there. We heard him not too far away, and probably not real smart. I thought, well, I'll just call right quick and see if he answers. Standing in the middle of the road. And so I called, and
Classic.
Yeah, and it answered immediately, and I said, "Uh-oh, we got to get hidden quickly," So so we ran, 40 or 50 yards, and there's an old fire break there, and I told my youngest, I said, "Well, I think that bird will probably come down that fire break. He's going to strut right down through there. It'll be good." So I had him set up, to shoot that way. And while we're making this mad dash for 50 or 60 yards, the bird gobbles like 3 more times. I mean, it's just hammering, and I know better than to say anything until we get set down. So just as an afterthought, I told my youngest son, I said, I'm just going to sit on the opposite side of this tree just in case it comes in, because he's coming, he's hot, and and I thought it would come down the road. But the way I was faced was just a wide open oak hammock. I mean, no cover whatsoever. And and the bird was off to our left. And so I got sat down, got my call. And before I even finished, a little soft yelp, I mean, it just cut me off. I was like, he is coming. I mean, quickly. And it wasn't just, I don't know. I thought, I don't need my call anymore. He knows where I am. And so I have a box call. I've hunted the same one since I was 12 years old. And I was putting that down, and I still didn't know if it was going to come in front of me or him. But that bird almost just immediately then we heard him running through the woods. I mean, just the leaves just and it's literally running. I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to come in front of me. He's coming through the thick stuff and not around, the fire guard. And I told my youngest son, I said, I don't think he's coming your way. I think I'm going to have to shoot the bird. And he's like, that's fine, get it. And it ran right up to the edge, stopped for just a second, and I could see it, kind of obscured, but he was about 20 yards away. And then just paused there for a minute or two and stepped right out in the open. And and immediately that bird looked my way and saw me. I mean, of course, I'm full camo up against a big tree, gun on my knees, everything's right, ready to go. But it saw me and immediately started running. And and I shot it, and it all worked out. It was really good. I actually ended up having to shoot that bird twice. It's only the second time I've ever had to do it, because it was running and I didn't get a great hit on it the first time. I mean, he went down, and then he kind of got back up and looked like he was going to shrug it off. And I didn't really think he would, but I shot him again just to make sure. But it was a really nice bird. But it was really cool because it happened so fast. We heard the bird first at 9:30, and I shot the bird at 9:35. Wow. It was quick.
Really fast.
Was this Osceola or Eastern?
It was an Osceola. Yep. It was below. Okay. It was below the line.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So, very cool.
Yeah. It was a fun hunt. And I hated it that it didn't come out in front of my younger son, but he's been on a lot of turkey hunts with me and had a lot of success. So I think he was pretty tickled to see the old man get one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been in that situation growing up where, I like to kill a turkey, don't get me wrong. And my dad and everybody always wanted me to be the shooter.
Right.
But I can remember a couple of times when I was with Dad, and like when you were describing that time that the day before when the bird walked past you to get in front of them. old dad, my dad, I think would have gone ahead and pulled the plug on that one.
Oh, that's funny.
I think I might have done the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
Huh.
But, I always enjoyed seeing how excited he still got about it.
Right.
He hasn't been hunting here in the past couple of years, but, all of my memories of my dad, he always lit up about turkeys.
Right.
Just didn't see him like that with anything else.
Huh.
Unless the fish are really biting, that turkeys was the only time I saw him like that. But, well, that's a pretty cool story. I know a lot of folks out there can relate. There's quite a bit of public land in Florida, and it's very attractive for folks within the state and out of the state.
Sure.
So I guess you guys want to get to business. Let's talk turkeys in Florida and what's going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to throw it to you, buddy, first, and just let you tell us about the status of turkeys in Florida.
Yeah. It's a big long story. I'm not sure how far back to start. So, just real briefly, the restocking here took place earlier than most places in the country. So I think it began around 1949 and was largely complete about 1970.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So Florida was fortunate in that there's a lot of swamps and things that are inaccessible. And so for that time, there were a lot of birds in pockets, where they were extirpated elsewhere. We held quite a few birds, more so than other folks. And but anyway, and then it also gave places to catch birds and move them. But so restocking was finished pretty early, and then the population continued to grow, just kind of slowly over time, and seemed like it peaked probably what we think is about 2008. And it's certainly declined some since then, best we can tell, but not overly alarmingly. And it's been kind of gradual, but then there have been a couple of periods of really stable years too. So all in all, that I think they're holding their own pretty good. Certainly they face pressures, from development especially. But all in all, the signs here have not been quite as alarming as in other places. Now, our harvest is less than it used to be, we think, but pretty stable actually for quite a while.
Yeah. And is that pretty consistent across both subspecies, or are there a little bit differences in the timeline for the Osceola versus the Eastern?
That's a good question. We actually we certainly recognize we have two subspecies, one of which is only found in Florida, but we manage turkeys as a single species here in the state. So we really don't do many surveys or things like that and worry about where the line is or what it is.
Right.
We manage collectively for the entire state.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the harvest trends, is that corrected for hunter effort, or do you have a feel for how hunter effort has changed over the last couple of decades?
Yeah, I tried to have a lot of stuff at my fingertips here, so
sometimes it ends up being too much, right?
I was afraid of that too. So, but there's so many numbers, I knew I couldn't commit everything to memory. The number of hunters has stayed remarkably consistent for a long time. So it's about 26,000 people hunt birds every year in Florida. So we do a spring survey at the end of the year of turkey hunters, and so we estimate actual turkey harvest, and then we also correct that for 100 days per turkey harvested too, and that certainly has fluctuated some, but it's been fairly consistent. There's some ups and downs, but pretty consistent since about 2012 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one thing that was interesting to me, buddy, is you shared some of that data with us before you came on, and I'm looking at that turkey hunting status report right now, and in figure 1, I mean, you do notice a little bit of an increase over time from like 2000 to 2009 or so, which makes sense because that's when you said the population peaked. But then really since then it's stayed remarkably stable, the number of hunters at least. And I mean, really you could almost go back to the late 80s
Yeah.
and there's not a drastic difference in the number of turkey hunters, it seems like.
Yeah, there's really not. It's been, like I said, remarkably consistent to me, the number of hunters. So
Yeah. One thing I had a question about, buddy, and maybe you have the data or maybe you don't. I'm not sure, but I was going to ask anyway. Has the proportion of the hunters that are from within the state versus out of state changed at all? Do you have any data to look at that?
we do. Certainly, we have license sale data. Excuse me, and
Mhm.
and we also ask some of those questions on our spring survey annually that we've done, since 1989. So
Mhm.
the number of non-residents remained really stable, or really about the same until
Yeah.
let's see, I actually wrote it down here in another place. Until about 2017, and that's when non-resident participation started increasing some. Um, and it's increased a fair amount, through 2022. We haven't done 23's data yet, but it's primarily, there's always concern with residents of, how many
Mhm.
non-residents are coming and all that, and I totally understand it. But so in 2022 and 2021, about 17% of the turkey hunters who hunted in Florida are non-residents, so a little bit less than
Mhm.
20%, and they hunt almost exclusively on private land. So
Okay.
Is
Is
that
that
distributed
mostly?
more? Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead, Marcus. I think you were about to ask the same question.
No, go ahead. I think we are, but you can
Yeah, I was going to ask
jump
if a
in.
lot of those non-resident hunters are going after Osceola, so that's
sure,
targeted towards the southern half of the state, I
no
would assume.
question. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and they, we have a few WMAs, below Highway 70, so the early season, that starts probably earlier
Mhm.
than anywhere else in the country. Some of those don't require quota permits, and those do get a lot of non-resident pressure those first 2 weeks. After the first 2 weeks, it eases up, and it's more evenly distributed when the entire state's open, even though they concentrate, below the Osceola line.
Mhm.
But sure, we do have a little bit more data on the quota permits. There's always interest with folks wanting to know, how many non-residents use quota permits, that are available to everyone. Our special opportunity hunts are limited to no more than 10% of non-residents, so 90% go to residents.
Hmm.
That is not in place currently for our quota hunts. But I will say, I have it right here. In 2022, only 4% of those quota permits went to non-residents. So it's a remarkably low number.
Mhm.
So the non-residents that come, they either seem like most of them come early and hunt below 70 on places you don't have to draw, or they come hunt private land, which is primarily what happens.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
it seems like that would be one of the greatest challenges to face as a turkey program coordinator in any state is thinking about how seasons are structured in surrounding states and how that's going to influence like non-resident attraction to your state. And that could be, something that's very challenging to balance because you want to give those non-residents opportunity as well, especially, when you've got a special situation like you do with the Osceola subspecies being only found in Florida. But at the same time, you're trying to ensure a quality experience for your residents as
Sure,
well.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's difficult. And I, all the concerns, by residents and of course non-residents may have some too. I mean, I hear all the arguments and certainly take them all to heart for sure. So we
Mhm.
just want to do what's best for turkeys and for turkey hunters. So
All right.
Yeah. Well, you're trying to balance it, and I agree. Particularly in this situation, we've got a subspecies that's all contained within the state in a
Even in
peninsula.
just a portion of the state.
Right. Yeah, and it's so concentrated, and it's the early season. That's the first one open, so you got many things that would lead you to believe that you'd have a high pressure
sure,
on that resource.
yep, yeah. And I will say, as I guess as part of this conversation, or at least ancillary to it, our current season framework has been the same since 1994. So, with the exception of Holmes County and the Panhandle, I was going to talk about that a little bit. That was one county that residents alerted us to in the late 90s, where they just told us that turkeys had flat disappeared from there. And so we did some surveys, and lo and behold, we couldn't find any turkeys there. And so we closed the season and immediately, restocked birds there. So I was part of that effort in 98 and 99 and running over into 2000. And so that county was closed for many years, and then gradually came back. So that is one exception to our the restoration effort here. But other than that county's closure and then subsequent reopening, it's open like normal now, normal statewide regulations. That's really the only difference.
So during that restocking, now that county is performing similarly to other ones. So do you have any idea why that happened?
No, other than it was the locals there, the residents of that county really alerted us to that problem, and that's one reason why I have great confidence.
Is this county in the Panhandle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the Panhandle. So the story from them is they just believed it was flat illegal harvest was probably the primary driver.
Wow.
Yeah, but I certainly don't know that that's the whole story. I know the residents were concerned and really took it to heart and were super cooperative, and many of them kind of banded together and really started doing a lot of habitat work throughout the county. And so obviously that helped too. So there were probably some habitat issues there as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had not heard of that particular instance.
Yeah, it was neat.
So
it was neat to be a part of it, then and then now seeing it back to, to fully, normal statewide regulations.
Well, it seems like a real success story there. That
for sure.
That the community identified a problem, you responded to it, and seems like to some degree at least it fixed it.
Yeah, for sure.
Now that you have stable populations, it sounds like they're
right.
We've been talking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's one other metric that we get from our spring hunter survey is hunter satisfaction, and I do place a great deal of emphasis on that, or I think it means a lot too, because hunters definitely alerted us to that problem, way back when, and so we value what folks say and want to know. So that's another one of those things that we look at when when with all the talk of declines throughout the Southeast and elsewhere, and that stayed pretty good here too. So we're fortunate, and but I do put value in that metric as well.
So you're saying satisfaction has stayed pretty consistent?
Yes, pretty consistent and pretty good. Yep.
Good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's one thing that I don't think we talk about it enough. Hunters are really important to conserving resources like wild turkeys, but maintaining hunter satisfaction is really important. And we have some examples from around the world where we lose that interest, and then that becomes a real conservation problem for a species.
Certainly.
And maintaining that interest and making sure that we're getting the next generation, like you are with your sons, interested in maintaining that over time is pretty critical to this whole thing from a conservation standpoint. And I'm glad to hear that you guys are collecting that data and that you place an emphasis on it, because I do think it's critical that we maintain high interest from the hunting community.
Yeah, I do too, and especially here in Florida. There's obviously heavy pressure, from development and things on private land, and about best we can tell, about 85% of our harvest comes from private land. So we need people interested and passionate about turkeys, for their long-term future here in Florida.
Yeah. So I know we haven't talked about the ongoing research work much yet, but I know that you've been part of several projects, including the ongoing work now that I'm a collaborator on. So I was going to ask you, were there things happening in the state that you were trying to address with research, and maybe tell us a little bit about the previous project and now the ongoing work?
Sure. So in I think it was 2014 through about 2017, maybe part of 18. We did a gobbling and nesting chronology study in North Florida. So it included some areas around Gainesville and then some up around in the Tallahassee area. And we wanted to, of course, we have a lot of older data, from Levitt Williams, all the fantastic work he did. But we wanted to get an update on maybe, how gobbling, the timing of nesting and gobbling is going. So we did that in North Florida, and had plans to do that in South Florida, and attempted a project a few years after that, and it was disrupted largely by Hurricane Irma. I think one of the WMAs where they were going to catch a lot of birds, the birds left, or it just got so wet, it became difficult to try to get them. So that was suspended for a couple of years. And now we've as you know, we've started again and doing that nesting and gobbling chronology study there in South Florida on a couple of sites. So we want to accomplish with that, getting South Florida data. We have North Florida data, and just to get a new, fresher look at how what those dates are statewide. So don't have any, don't know that there's any issues going on with it. Like I said, our season structure has been the same since 1994, but certainly want to look at new data.
Yeah. So you said that there was historical data from Levitt. Were you able to compare the stuff in North Florida in terms of the chronology of the gobbling and nesting to what he found?
I have. I can't remember it all, but it was pretty similar. It was pretty close. Not a lot of difference. That, like I said, I don't remember the exact dates or the particulars, but I know the take-home message was pretty close.
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
So, when was that work done?
Some in the 60s, and I think probably in the 70s as well. And
okay.
I can't remember how much further past it goes, but he did work on turkeys for a long, long time in Florida. Right.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that work. It's really, really interesting reading about a lot of the stuff that he did.
Right.
So basically, we're at least 4 decades later, and the gobbling chronology and nesting sounds like it's pretty similar.
Yes.
In terms of the timing.
Right.
And I would guess, talking about North Florida, when would you say, buddy, that most hens start their nest, start laying? Would it be like 3rd or 4th week of March?
I have that right here.
Got it handy.
Yeah. So this is from the North Florida study. Of course, there's a couple of peaks in there, but probably they begin probably the first week in March. Probably the median, or there about the middle, is about mid-April. So it's a pretty wide span, but it really picks up. A big proportion of them have it on their mind and are laying by the end of March, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'd expect.
Yeah.
So peak laying 3rd or 4th week in March.
Yeah.
Peak incubation more like mid-April. Or early April.
Probably. I'm looking at the graph now. About the 3rd week in April. We're about the April 26th or thereabouts.
Okay. Very interesting.
So have y'all been seeing any major trends in, I don't want to pull us back off the research, but there was one other thing about population status I wanted to get to. Any trends in poult per hen ratios over time? How does that look?
That's a good question. We have that, just like our hunting report, we have our summer survey report that we provide to the public online. And of course, I know you guys are real good about sharing links. But we've not had a statewide, brood survey or summer survey, we call it, for a long time in Florida. So we initiated in 2019, and so that was the initial year, and participation was not as great as what we would have liked. But it's hard to get the word out, letting folks know that, hey, this is an annual survey, and we really want your participation. We need it. This is a new effort, and we're going to do it every year from now on.
Is this something that you're mailing out the request to licensed hunters?
No. So it's totally a we do it with Survey 123. So it's totally relies on public participation. No mailer, no anything like that. We just try to get the word out to folks that when they see birds during June, July, and August, to please report them. And so the first year we didn't have great data. I mean, we got data, but the error bars were pretty big. So we usually don't publish the 2019 data, but we have 2020, 2021, and 2022's results online, and you can see it's been fairly consistent in the poults per hen, statewide. I mean, in 2020 it was 1.9, 21 it was 2.3. In 2022, it was 2.0. So not a lot of change. Looking at it statewide, and we do. We're learning how to get those, the word out, and folks are becoming, increasingly participating in it, which is awesome. We totally rely on them. So we've been getting between 3,000 and 4,000, observations during that period. And with that amount, we can do regional assessments too, besides just a statewide number. So that's highly useful. So I would.
It's critical data.
It's critical. I can't stress enough. If you live in Florida, the survey starts June 1 and runs through the end of August. Please report your turkeys, because it's super important data for us, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is coming out at the perfect time if somebody wants to participate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We wait until.
Buddy, how do they? I just wanted to get a little bit into the technicals of how somebody, like, let's just say one of our listeners wants to fill out that survey and they love turkeys and they say I'm on the way to work or whatever.
Yeah. So
what do they need to do to participate?
There's a couple of ways, and I will be sharing all that soon. Kind of getting the effort up for that, since we're just now in the first part of May. But there's two ways. We have an app that you can download. It's called Survey 123. You can do it right from your phone, which is what most people do. And but also we have a link, on the internet, so you can get on your computer. What I usually do, if I'm almost always driving when I see them, so I just know where I see them and all that. Get to my computer, and the link will take you right to that survey again, to Survey 123, and you just enter your data. It's a few simple questions, and it's so valuable. Can't stress it enough.
Yeah. No, I agree with you that data is very important to understand how reproduction is going in the populations, and there's really we don't have another very good way to get that kind of data. So
for sure,
for you, those of you out there that are riding around in Florida during that time of the year, we need you to participate.
Absolutely.
So, is there a link that we can provide, buddy?
Yeah, I will definitely give it to you. Yep. Okay. And usually I learned the first year, we started trying to advertise it a couple of days before June 1, and people tried to start reporting immediately. And so the survey period doesn't begin until June 1. So I've learned since I don't say anything until June 1. Otherwise, you get people, you love it, they're wanting to participate, but it only starts on June 1. So,
and just because it's standardized to try to capture the same data year after year.
Right.
Well, I just want to make sure folks out there know that that data is still valuable. We just have that have it standardized, and that's the reason it has that specific date.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll be on vacation in North Florida beginning of June, so I may have to tell my wife each day. It's like, sorry, babe, got to go drive around and look for some broods.
That's right.
Well, that seems like a fun pastime for me.
Absolutely.
Let's ride around.
Yeah,
but she may be mad, getting stuck carrying all the floaties down to the beach by herself.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, that's good, and I'm glad to have that survey, and I know that I've talked to quite a few people in the state that are excited that that's an opportunity, and they're excited to participate in it.
Right.
So we can provide as much help on our end as well, making it easy for people that are interested in listening.
Yeah, and a lot of our listeners are always asking how they can give back to turkey. So this is a great example of one of those.
That's a really easy way to give back something right there, is just help us collect data.
It is. I mean, I can't stress it enough. And really, it's really crucial because it's driven totally by public participation. And as part of that, I wanted to make sure that, that people see that we're using it and all that. And so that's why we put an annual report that shows the results, not too far, not too long after August, when the survey ends. We analyze that data pretty quick and get it out to the public because we want them to know. I mean, it's we're using it and see the results. So
I would love it if we could help double your number of respondents this year.
That'd be
make sure to send us a link that we can post on our social media accounts too.
I will.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, and also everybody out there, make sure everybody knows about that, and make them fill it out, guilt them into it, whatever you got to do.
That's right.
We need as much participation as possible,
for sure. And like you mentioned, Marcus, to do a statewide survey like that is pretty difficult, and that's why we haven't had one until 2019. We've toyed with it for a long time, a lot of different means and mechanisms, and it's just not easy to do.
Sure.
But this works pretty darn good. And so it's a good way for people to really help and give back on turkeys.
Sure. Well, related to that, you said, I just kind of did some mental math, which I know, guys, bear with me for a minute. It sounded like the poults per hen for the 3 years of data was around 2 on average, right at it, which is pretty good in the South.
Right.
Compared to what we've been seeing from a lot of places.
Yeah. So that's good news to hear that.
Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.